So, good morning. Good morning. And welcome to the second day of the Auburn Avenue Research Library's Collecting, Writing, and Researching While Black Conference. As many of you already know, this conference is held in celebration of our 30th anniversary. We are more than elated to have you join us this week as we continue to share our collected efforts and strengthen our community through our wonderful talks and panel discussions on the Black experience. It is our hope that you will share this knowledge and information to all who you encounter. My name is Priscilla Dickerson, and I am the coordinator for this panel discussion today, the Black-owned bookstore, serving as a community cultural center for access, discovery, and learning. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing to you our moderator for this panel, that is none other than Fefe Handy, who will afterwards introduce our esteemed panelists. As founder and CEO of Page Turners Make Great Learners, Fefe Handy presides over an organization dedicated to igniting a love of reading in young people. Yet, after 20 years in the early literacy field, one fact continues to surprise her. Educators, parents, and students lack awareness in the different genres of young people's literature and the outstanding authors contributing to them. Page Turner's new podcast, Pass the Book to Fefe, will serve as a resource for adult searching for those special books that speak to and resonate with the lives and experiences of young people from preschool to high school. Fefe will invite renowned contemporary authors to join her in the virtual living room for a conversation about, within, and beyond the pages of books. Through these discussions, listeners will explore themes of diversity, culture, self-awareness, and empathy, which underpins today's most successful and important works of young people's literature. Children discover themselves when they are lost in the pages of a book. Our mission, says Fefe Handy, is as parents and educators, is to lead children to the books that will inspire, encourage, and empower them to become their authentic best selves. Thank you so much, and I'm introducing Fefe Handy.
Thank you, Priscilla. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Bear with me because I am on the stage with some amazing folks. The first one that I would like to introduce is Adigun Kazemde Ajamu, who is the owner of Black Dot Cultural Center and Bookstore. Adigun is a visionary community activist and advocate for Black empowerment through education, author of Think Black, The Manifesto, and an avid reader. He is passionate about promoting positive Black messaging with a purpose. His love for his people and thirst for knowledge led him to found the Black Dot Cultural Center and Bookstore in downtown Lithonia. Please welcome and give a warm round of applause for Adigun Kazemde Ajamu. The amazing Bunnie Hilliard, owner of Brave and Kind Bookshop. Bunnie is a double HBCU graduate of Florida A&M University and Clark Atlanta University, and wife and mom of two. Brave and Kind Bookshop was established in 2018, and she is proud to serve and represent Atlanta as a Black-owned, woman-run community bookshop with a mission aimed at prioritizing an intentional collection of diverse and inclusive stories, championing representation for the people we want to raise and be in the world. Please welcome and give a warm round of applause to Bunnie Hilliard. Rosa Duffy is the owner of For Keeps Books. Rosa is an Atlanta-based artist and the owner and curator of For Keeps Books. Born and raised in Atlanta, Rosa's passion for both literature and visual arts led her to establish For Keeps Books in 2018, a unique bookstore, reading room, and archive dedicated to celebrating Black literature in all its forms. Please welcome and give a round of applause for Rosa Duffy. Last but certainly not least, Katie Mitchell, who is author and owner of Good Books ATL. Katie is a storyteller and bookseller based in Atlanta. She's the author of Prose to the People, a celebration of Black bookstores, which profiles Black bookstores from the 1830s to present day, complete with original and archival photography and contributions from Nikki Giovanni, Pearl Clegg, and a host of other journalists, academics, and poets. Please welcome and give a round of applause to Katie Mitchell. Can everybody hear me okay? I know I talk loud, but it seems like my voice is not reverberating the way that I want it to this morning. So forgive me in advance for being nasally, but I just wanted to make sure you could hear me clearly. Well, first, let me say it is an honor, and I am in awe of all of you to sit on this stage with you this morning. More than that, I am proud of the work that you do. It aligns with my own work of igniting a love of reading in children in Title I schools across Atlanta. I imagine that it's not easy to do this kind of work the way that you all specifically do it, the way that you all have chosen to do it, especially with the financial waves and waters you have to face, the ebbs and flows. At the end of the day, it's a business. At the end of the day, I think that you all have a common denominator, your immeasurable love of books. But you all do it kind of differently. I did a little bit of truncated research on all of them, and I want to really talk about specifically how they do what they do, why they do what they do for the communities in which they serve. They're all in different areas of Atlanta, and they seem to be sort of the drum majors of social justice, an awakening, a love of Black culture, and to display and exemplify the brilliance and the beauty of being Black. So I've shared with you all of their bookshops, but I want to know briefly, discuss why you chose the names of your specific bookstores. And Rosa, since you're closest to me, we'll start with you.
Let's make sure this is on. Hello. Hi guys, thank you for coming. There were a few reasons why I chose to name For Keeps Books. One of them being, and I have to be honest, there's a song by Quality Control, Migos, and Nicki Minaj, and I liked the song, so that always was in my head, For Keeps. But then the mission of the space is kind of to collect and curate and home some literature that is oftentimes, and I just posted about this for our 6-year anniversary, but some stuff that's kind of kept behind closed doors, and there are barriers between the literature and the folks that the literature was made for. And my intention in the space is to make those things accessible to the people that they were made for. So For Keeps means it's for us, and we're always gonna have a hold of our stories, whether they're kept from us or tried to, kind of tried to be removed from our lexicon or our spaces. Like, they are for us, and that's why I named it For Keeps. So there were many reasons. Initially, the song, and then I think it really aligns with our mission. Like, these are our stories; they're made for us, and we're supposed to be kind of in charge of them in the way that they're presented to the world. And so that's really the reason that I called it For Keeps. It's short and it's sweet and it's aligned with kind of what we do in the space.
Yeah, and it's
So
memorable as well.
it's an easy kind of name, so that's why I chose it. Yeah.
Kazemde.
Yes, can you hear me? Well, first, thank you for having us at the Auburn Research Library, and thank you all for coming. Black Dot, where did that come from? I'm having an elder moment because I can't remember the title of the book that I read, but Black Dot there's two meanings for it. It's the oldest symbol that we know for the Creator. So if you take a circle and you put a dot right in the center of it, that is a symbol of the Creator. And second, which was really kind of grabbed me, was the black dot kind of operates as this portal within us. And it takes you from your conscious self to your unconscious knowing. So everything that we need to know is really within us. We tend to look outside of ourselves for the answer, but you go through this portal and then we find out more about self, about culture. So that inspired me from an educational perspective to name my business Black Dot, Culture Center and Bookstore.
I love that. Katie.
Thank you, Fefe. For Pros to the People, which is about all these black bookstores that we all know and love, and going back to Rosa's answer about it's for us. So for Pros to the People, I was inspired by the black bookstores that hold our histories, and I found that we didn't know the history of the stores that held our history so closely. And so I wanted to have it as a calling card, like this is for us, this is Pros for all of us, and it's for black people specifically. And that's why I named the book Pros to the People.
Love it, love it.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you for having me. So the name of the bookstore, Brave and Kind Books. So we are primarily a children's bookstore. And like Rosa, there are many little reasons that I always say we, the community, myself, came up with the name Brave and Kind. But one that sticks out to me is there's a quote from a movie that is one of my favorite movies. And it says, or it goes, when you read a book as a child, it becomes a part of you in a way that no other reading in your whole life does. And so I wanted people, kids, families, when they came to the space, when they saw the name, when they thought about, the stories that they were reading, when we curate the collection that we have in the store, to think about what it meant to be brave and what it meant to be kind. And I hope that the stories that they found in the store would inspire them to be brave and kind, and to inspire them to think of themselves as brave and kind. At the time that we opened the store, 2018 was kind of in the middle of a period in our lives where I was looking for hope, and I was looking to plant seeds in the minds of the people that I hoped would move us in a direction of the hope of bravery and kindness that we needed at that time. So that's it.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. It really is. I'm going to ask each of them questions, and then I'm going to ask some general questions. So, Bunnie, I want to start with you, brave and kind. And you mentioned that you opened your doors pre-COVID, 2018. That statement, I think I read an article where you said to be brave and kind is all we can hope for our children. I think you just iterated that as well, and for ourselves. Does that statement hold more meaning today, given the political climate, given what we went through in a global pandemic? How does that statement hold true for you? Does it more so today than it did when you were thinking what you wanted to do and how you wanted to do it?
That's a good question, Fefe. I don't know that I was ready to talk about my feelings about where we are today and being brave and kind today, because I I still feel mad today, if I'm being quite honest. But you know what I do. I had an odd conversation with the meat delivery guy from the restaurant next door to the bookstore as I was grappling with my feelings about where we are today. And one of the things that he said to me as I was just like, how are we supposed to do this, sir? And he's like, ma'am, okay, we're having this conversation. Is he was giving me a story about, you know, how he felt about who he was right now, how he wanted to show up for his daughters, and what his mama always told him. And I thought, that's what I want. What I want my kids to see right now, and when they grow up, I want them to be able to draw on during hard times. I want them to be able to look back and say, you know what my mama always told me. And so, yes, I do. I want to show up brave and kind. I want to show my children that even in hard times, we still have to do brave things and hard things, and we still have to be kind, because that's how we should show up for ourselves. That's how we should show up for each other. And we still, at the end of the day, we want to be people that we can look at ourselves in the mirror and be proud of. And so, yes.
I like that. Kazemde, I believe that I read an article where you said that a friend's mom asked you, what were you going to do about it? And that was the genesis. That was the prick in your heart where you had to answer the call. That it was somewhat of a call of action for you. But it took you 25 years to do it. So I want to know the responsibility to spur change in the community that you serve. What message of Black positivity did you want to, I guess, you want it to resonate in the community? What, you know, in terms of that spark or that spur in your heart, what is your responsibility?
That's a very good question, and it's a question I think that all of us need to answer. For me, I grew up in a household of social activism. My mom was always active in the civil rights movement, coming from New Jersey. But as a young man, when you talk about the 25 years, I felt like in order for Black people to listen to each other, we had to have money. We had to have the nice cars, or that's the only, you had to aspire to that, or you had to get to that point for people to follow or even to listen. And it took 25 years for me to understand that we all have a role to play. And it was with that conversation that I had with my friend's mother when I did all this studying about African history, African American history, and I'm excited, and I'm having this conversation with her, and I'm telling her all the things that I've learned. And she stopped me and she said, "What you gonna do about it, brother?" And that hit in a way that made me realize that we all have a role to play. We all have certain gifts that we can give to, right? And that we have to make those sacrifices if we want the betterment, we want better for our community. That we take our area, our purpose, our lanes, and we get back in those areas. And if we're not, then our children and their children are going to have these same conversations if we don't take action. So I just felt like I have something to give, no matter how small or how large. And if I can inspire others to do the same, then that just brings us closer to harmony, if you will.
I so agree. You know, I believe that one person can change a community, change a neighborhood, change the hearts and minds of people to create a movement. It takes that one ripple. And I think that's what you did. But I think it also took a metamorphosis for you. 25 years is a long time. So do you think that the change and the movement had to start with you?
I think that, 25 years was peppered with so many different things and really maturity, right? I don't even know if I want to call it a high school dropout, because I didn't complete the 10th grade year. GED, military. So there were so many things that I had to do in order to build my own self-confidence, right? Because the world looks at, you're just a black man in America going through black male stuff. Coming from where I came from, it's learning to embrace that instead of being ashamed of it. Because those experiences have molded me into who I am today, that now I can give back and I can relate to other brothers and sisters that are going through the same things that I do. So I think it took those 25 years, but there's no accidents, right? There's no coincidences. When it was time for me to step forward, it was my time. I wasn't ready 15 years ago or 10 years ago. I was ready when I was supposed to be ready.
Thank you. Rosa. Rosa's bookstore is situated in one of the sweetest spots in Atlanta, Sweet Auburn Avenue. Auburn Avenue is known for some wonderful pioneers and trailblazers. And I believe that I read in an article that the people in that community recognize you as a matron. She's a matron of the block. What I'd like to know, we're all talking about responsibility. And is it a burden of responsibility? I mean, you're in one of the most historic locations in Atlanta. Is it a burden of responsibility or an honor to hold such power and influence in the community?
Thank you, Fefe. Good question. I definitely think it's an honor. I grew up in this neighborhood. I had, what was our team called? We had a black trivia team at my high school, and our competition was in this room. So I and my parents still go to church at First Church around the corner. So this is a community I'm familiar with and have been since I've, since I can remember, right? So all of my memories are in this neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods in Atlanta. Atlanta is very much a part of the reason that I'm interested in what I am interested in, and the community has molded me to be in a position to open a space on Auburn Avenue. It was definitely, obviously, an influence on the reason I picked my location is the fact that Auburn Ave Research Library was here. Is one of the 3 African American research libraries, in the country. This and Schaumburg, and Schaumburg was a big influence on why I opened the space. But yeah, the Auburn Ave Research Library, the Apex Museum, obviously the Martin Luther King Center and the Martin Luther King Home, the Vitamin Lady, Ebenezer, Baptist Church, everything about this street, other than the fact that I'm familiar with it personally. I think it's a very important place and rich with Black history. And you were mentioning ebbs and flows earlier. Auburn Avenue has its ebbs and flows. Atlanta has shifts all the time. So but it's still a very, very important street, and the community still exists. There are people that have been here, born on Auburn Ave, still on Auburn Ave, that frequent For Keeps books. It's an honor to be on Auburn Avenue, and I don't take it lightly, right? So I know that there's a responsibility that comes with being here, and that means serving your community. It's For Keeps is not a vanity project. It's something that I want everybody to be a part of and people to benefit from it in the same ways that they benefit from being anywhere else on this block. And I'm happy to be here. I've been here. This week is our 6-year anniversary, so I'm happy.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. It's a labor of love. It's a labor of love. But but yes, I'm honored to share space with the folks that inspired the creation of For Keeps. And I think that a lot of folks that I have the honor of interacting with in the space, young and old, are the folks that are going to be in the For Keeps or the Black Dot or the Prose to the People or the Brave and Kind of the future. So I'm seeing a lot of young people come through that are very inspiring and have kind of hold the same views and outlook on the world that the people that created Auburn Ave had, right, or still have. So it's a pleasure to be on Auburn Avenue, and I'm really, really lucky to be in this community and to share space with all the people that came before me.
That's awesome. Now, I think it's important to note, Rosa, that your background is as an artist in art, and you went to school for artistry. How did you end up opening for Keeps? How did the path change?
So it's a long and a windy path, but my mom's telling me to get the mic closer to my face. But so I still have an art practice. I have a sculpture practice that has its moments because I also have a business. But my practice is research based. So I moved to New York when I was 18. I had just turned 18, and I moved there, and I lived there for almost a decade. And everything that I was making while in art school was research based. So I am very influenced by the written word. Everything that I produce initially comes from reading something that I then project into a visual piece. I think that without books, I would have nothing to kind of pull from. I think that the creators that came before me really created a guide for me to work from, and so that's where my collecting started, was really to get influence for my practice. I didn't like just creating something. I wanted to have a reason why I was making it. So I started collecting when I left home at 18, and that's how I recognized the lack of material that was available to me just to have on my own. I realized that there were a lot of spaces, particularly in New York, that didn't really value Black material or Black works. So these bookstores were focused mostly on European writers or Western writers. They weren't focused on Black writers. So I felt like there was not much to choose from when I was looking to identify with the work, right? But I also found a lot of peace and understanding in these spaces that I didn't find in other spaces in New York. It's a very chaotic city, so I was happy when I was in book spaces, whether it was the Schomburg or Studio Museum or East Village Books. These are the places that I felt most at home, even though it was lacking a lot of information for me to pull from. So I moved home and worked for Radcliffe Bailey, who has the piece on the front of the Auburn Avenue Research Library, that
that's
massive
huge
sculpture. I was his artist assistant for a while, but this was always in my mind that as an extension of my practice, which is what I consider For Keeps to be, I wanted to create a space for everybody to be influenced, not just me, right? I didn't want to hoard all this material in my house. At one point in my apartment, I was sleeping with books because you guys know how small New York apartments are. So it was my work, and it was my research material, and I felt like everybody could be influenced by this, and I was lucky enough to kind of be right next to it, and I wanted everybody else to feel that way. So For Keeps is still my art practice, right? It just is based in literature. So that's how I got from there to here, I suppose.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's interesting. So you were using books as pillows, and then you turn on the stove to keep warm.
My
huh?
friend said today.
The apartments are very small in
They're
New
very
York.
tiny. My friend
Yeah.
today said For Keeps is just my apartment on St. Mark's on Auburn Avenue. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Katie,
Katie.
I didn't forget about you. Oh my goodness, I have some questions for you. Now, Katie is a bit of a unicorn for me. We have some things in common. I grew up in a rural, small town in Mississippi. It's true. And I know that you have some roots in Mississippi. And unfortunately, I didn't have the good fortune to be exposed to the works of Audre Lorde, Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, and all the greats. They weren't talking about it in school. It was nowhere to be found in textbooks. It wasn't on the shelves of my school library or even the library in my town. And it took me a long time to be comfortable in the skin I'm in. It took me a long time. It was only until I stepped on the hallowed grounds of Jackson State University where I found a sense of pride of being black, being bold, trying to be bold and brilliant. So having said all of that, what's interesting about Katie is that she was exposed to and reared and nurtured in great works of wonderful black authors at an early age. What advantage, my question to you is, what advantage do you believe it gives you as a black bookstore owner?
Yes, shout out Mississippi. My family's from Jackson.
Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah, my parents went to Jackson State.
Come on, Jackson State, the I love.
So, I mean, I think growing up in that way, my family's from Jackson, which is a very black city, but I wasn't raised there. I lived in Germany and Kansas, and I had the idea that my family was the only black family in the world living in those places. And so my mom wanted to counteract any of the negative things that a young black child might experience living in a really white place by exposing me to all these black books, black authors and poets. And so before I could go out to play, I would have to recite a Langston Hughes poem. My brother would have to recite that poetry too. So that was just what we were steeped in. So I never had any crises of identity. I never thought black was less than. And I think being able to introduce other people to those authors that they might have not grown up with has been a real privilege and pleasure to see them work through any of the baggage that they might have grown up with, but being able to release it through books. I think books, they liberate us, whether we're, angsty teenagers who are just trying to figure out our own way, whether we are incarcerated people who want to learn and escape their current surroundings. One of the women that I met while writing Prose to the People, Glenn Johnson, she had a bookstore in New York for 10 years, and she would send books to incarcerated people. And she read a letter to me, and one of the men wrote to her and said, my body might be in prison, but my mind is free. And that's what books are able to do for people. So I think it's been, I've been really lucky to have my mother expose me to that and then be able to carry that forward and expose other people to it as well.
How did a conversation, I think I read in an article where conversation in the kitchen, probably over bacon and eggs, is how the idea originated. Can you talk a little bit about that, share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, me and my mom, we often eat breakfast together. I was at her house a particular day, and we were talking about the different books we were reading. And I had mentioned that my friends were in awe of my bookshelf at my apartment. And I thought my bookshelf was pretty normal. It had Toni Morrison on it, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin. And they were like, oh, my gosh, I've never heard of these people. And I was like, isn't that so strange? Isn't that weird that they haven't heard of those people? And she just said, what if we start a bookstore? And that's how Good Books got started. And by meeting with other black bookstore owners, I wanted to tell those stories as well. And that's how Prose to the People happened. So it's just been a ever-flowing journey.
Wow. Bunnie, I want to get back to something you said about brave and kind, and we were talking about political climate and that sort of thing. How do you envision bookstores play an integral role in raising awareness and affecting change? If we're not satisfied with what's going on around us, what is it that we can do as business owners, and particularly bookstore owners, to affect change?
I said, I don't know. Look, that's a question we're asking ourselves every day. How can we use this platform to affect change? I thought I was working real hard to do this time around, hosting phone banking in the bookshop and making signs in the bookshop and inviting families to come in and just creating more awareness and creating opportunities to teach about civic engagement in the bookshop. So I guess as I'm saying this aloud, we continue to do more of that. We don't stop. We're still not going back. We continue to create more community, create more opportunities. Bookstores are gathering spaces for sharing stories, for highlighting our experiences, and the books are there. The books have words in them, and there are the pages, but moreover, they're the stories inside are what are making the difference. And so this year, our theme, or I guess 2025, our stories connect us, and they do. And so I think as we move forward to use our spaces, continue to use our spaces as platforms to invite people in, to talk about the things that concern us, to collaborate on ways that we can work together. To your point, one person can cause that ripple to make that change, to move in a direction. It doesn't particularly feel that way today. I don't know why you keep asking me this particular question, because I'm not there yet. But I'm trying, and I'm doing my best, and that's all we can do every day, do our singular best, and that changes from day to day, and I understand that. So, I'll just reiterate, we continue to use our spaces as a platform to create community and to invite the community in, and to continue to push our ideas and push progress forward.
I couldn't agree more. Kazemde, I know that you do a little bit more than just reading in your shop. Can you share some of the other things that you do, or you create, or you make space and room for at Black Dot?
Where do I begin? Because we are a cultural center, what I wanted to accomplish was really to create space that others can come in and do certain events, right? Events around, whether it's spoken word, whether it's your typical book signing or author signing, but really to develop conversations. So at Black Dot, we may have, if city council election times, we have town halls, right? It's really to try to really make that a community space where the community can come and get information. And to your point, in times of trouble, there's also times of opportunity, right? In these times that we're in. So recently, Black Dot Leadership Academy, which is a 501c3, launched this past June. So it's really developing other programs around education and curriculum, specifically for young people, and then also for civics, because as we know, we've just gone through this period. How many of us really don't understand how politics and how government work, right? And then how do we focus that around our youth, so that they don't, again, I'm always thinking, we don't want to have these conversations generations from now, these same conversations. So how do we really effectively educate not just adults, but our youth? I'm a firm believer that we shouldn't rely on the public school system to teach our children to begin with. And most other cultures don't do that. Learning comes, especially culture about who you are, comes from home, right? And you grew up in that, like I didn't, right? But you grew up in that. So I didn't see, like, how many, I'm marveled by when I see children come into the bookstore and they go to the children's section and they see black faces, right? But yet our reading levels are low in school. What's the disconnect, right? And is the disconnect because they're not seeing their own faces, right? So I think as bookstore owners, this is a perfect time with banning books, and it's not just Florida, it's Georgia. Um, this is going to continue. This is an opportunity for us to step into these places to develop relationships with our elementary, middle, and high schools, right? That the children that are going to school can come to our spaces, and then we can provide some of these educational opportunities. And if I'll end with this, there's 18 years old, but there was a set of 5 young men in the Lithonia area. When they were 12, 13 years old, when I first opened up, they would come in, not every day, but almost every day, and they would want to use the internet to play their games. Well, there's nothing free, right? So what I would do is say, you got to give me 3 pages. And I would start with the miseducation of the Negro. You got to give me 3 pages, you read those, and then you could use my internet. And trust me, you're not going to fool me because I've read it. So I can ask you questions. And to this day, they're thankful for that, right? Because we typically just give things so our children know. It doesn't work that way. Get something back and just provide spaces where they can learn.
Let's talk about, my thought is, my humble opinion is that it's impossible to keep politics out of the business of books, because the very act of reading is political. How, and I'm just thinking in terms of what I do for a living, and it is igniting that love of reading and making sure that I show up for them and I give them books that represent them, their brilliance, and open up, that we can actually open up life's possibility by putting something in their hands and educating them, because you can't take education away. My concern is with the book banning, the preservation of history and our place in it. We can't talk about it in a classroom setting. We can't make one particular race feel less than the other race or feel bad about what that particular race did. How are you, as bookstore owners, going to preserve our history and to make sure that we keep talking about it?
I'll start, I suppose. So that's the whole intention of our space, right, down the street at Four Keeps. The intention is to kind of eliminate the barrier between us and our work, which I've said a million times, but that really is what we're trying to do. So in traditional spaces, universities, college libraries, there is a process you have to go through, one being feeling comfortable in those spaces. So in order to access the work and then retain the work to memory and then preserve it, because that's part of preservation is memorizing, being able to access it in the first place is the first part of preservation. So I think just having these things available to you, having this work that you might only be able to find in these library spaces that are kind of removed from, they're rooted in colonial histories, right? They're rooted in colonial practices, they're mystified, they're kind of removed from the general public. You have to be in a position to feel like you should be in these spaces. And we host some of the works that you can only find there. And they're just on a table. That you don't have to put on white gloves. You don't have to know what you're looking for. That's another part of being in library spaces and some archival spaces, which we love, because those means of preservation are necessary in order for them to exist years and years and years from now. You can't touch all over it. But there are other ways of preservation, like I said, which is being able to actually read the work, share it with your friends, have it exist outside of just the space that it's homed in. So that's how we operate at For Keeps. I was talking about this earlier, but we don't claim to be liberators. We hold the words of liberators in the space, and you read it and you take that as you want out into the world. So our approach to archival work, and like Bunnie, I say our, but it's really me and Ruki, who works there, who's in the back right now. But we just want you to have access to it. That's how you preserve in our eyes, is it all being in the same place, and then you come in and you peruse and you see what calls to you, and you retain it to memory, and you bring it out into the world, and you share it and apply it how you see fit. And whatever you deem as liberating for you is what's liberating. As a bookstore owner, a Black bookstore owner, and community space worker, that's how I see, that's how I do my best organizing. Being out in the street, or walking with large groups, or creating meetings or whatever. That might not be my means of organizing, but providing this work to others is how I organize. Also creating space for organizers of other disciplines to come in and use the space for free is also how I organize. And these are all approaches to preservation. It's just creating space to have conversation, to read, and to retain to memory.
Thank you, Rosa.
It's a very good question. I think that we are preserving, right? We're in a space that preserves, right? We have our HBCUs, right? It's what the challenge is, that we connect the dots, right? That's the next step in preservation, because we're all doing it on certain levels, right? I just speak about rare books, right? This year, a fellowship to learn about rare books in diverse spaces and art spaces, right? And how we can collect or preserve or sell. I'm astonished. I was in DC for a field trip, and we went to a rare book collector. It's not open to the public, but they just sold a James Baldwin collection. And then all the notes and letters, right? How valuable. And that went to a predominantly white university, and the research is going to be done from there, right? And how we need to be able not only to be in position to collect or even to know what we have. I remember someone gifted me when I first opened up Black Women of Antiquity by Ivan Van Sertima, and I sold it for $25, not realizing what I had. And you can't get it, right? So it's understanding those things, but it takes all of us really to come together and really to sit down and say, how do we go about this preservation, right? How do we not allow banned books, conservatism, anti-woke, whatever it is we want to, whatever label we want to put on. This is not new. It's our responsibility to come together and ensure that our works continue on and that they hold value. And it's interesting in the rare book, it's like you have this rare book, you place a value on it, and let's say that value is $500. Where's the demand within our own community to understand? Because rare books is like art. It's valuable, and it increases in value over time. So just understanding that that's the preservation process. That's how it's done. So we need to enter into those spaces and consolidate our resources.
Have y'all heard that quote, if you want to keep a secret from a Black person, put it in a book?
Yes.
So a Black bookstore owner is the one who said that quote. His name was Louis Michaud, and he had a bookstore in Harlem called National Memorial African Bookstore.
He was one of the pioneers.
Yeah, he had his store in Harlem for around 40 years. And I'd like that quote. People, bristle at it and say it's not true. But what I found is, in talking about banned books and preserving history, banned books aren't national bans. you can still buy the book.
Yeah, yeah.
Oftentimes, when the book is banned, sales go up because people are like, "Oh, what's in this book?"
I want to read it.
So, banned books doesn't stop us from reading the books, and the history is out there. So when we're talking about the political moment we're in, we've been in this political moment before, and people have written about it. People have given us, guidebooks for what to do, but it's that the barrier is that it's in a book and you have to read it, right? It's not a lot of the times not going to be in these bite-sized portions. So I think that's how we preserve it, by providing these books, being well-read ourselves so that we can recommend the right things for people who are looking, and then, like everyone on stage, provide the space for people to explore what they're interested in. So I think that's what Black bookstores do, is to provide the space and provide the history, and they hold it and act as conductors, if you will, for that journey of preservation and liberation.
Katie, to your point, something that you said, they have to be looking. And unfortunately, I know for a lot of the kids that I serve, it's not necessarily that they're not looking. There's few people to point them in the right direction. And then there's few people with the ability to take them to these spaces, these beautiful spaces that you've created. So the whole idea of modeling reading and searching for the secrets, searching for the answers is modeled in a classroom mostly. And as I said before, you're a bit of a unicorn. You had a mother who held the importance of self-educating her child and being a participant, an active participant in teaching her child that you are beautiful, you are brilliant, you are bold from the very beginning. It's a beautiful thing. But we know that you can't help what family you're born in. And maybe, just maybe, keeping food on the table and keeping the lights on, and maybe that winter coat is more important than that book, more important than bringing you to those beautiful spaces that you've created. So I guess I'm saying all of that to say is that if reading is being modeled in the classroom and it's not being modeled at home, maybe, just maybe, one of those babies are going to miss out on the beautiful brilliance of your work and the preservation of your history. And that's the reason why book banning impacts our children most. Eliminating history, we're more likely to repeat it. Nothing is new under the sun. You are right. We've been in this political climate before, but I think by banding together and working as a people, working unitedly, we can create the movement, or a movement. There's one last thing. I don't know where I am on time. There's one thing that I want to talk about is mental health. During the height of the pandemic, we all felt dislocated and disconnected. Even was dangerous. For a lot of us, we dealt with depression, anxiety. I know that I did. And for some of us, imposter syndrome, if you believe in such a thing. I know as bookstore owners, you probably had a lot of people to come into your space and come into your stores looking for direction and looking for answers and looking for support, emotional support in some way. How were you able to help in that regard? And that's for all of you.
I guess I'll start. It's kind of interesting because during the pandemic was some of my best years in business.
Same.
Right. And the community was coming because we were the only places that were open. You didn't have the clubs. You didn't have a whole lot of things, so they came to the bookstores. And there was always, to me, good conversation and coping, right? It's just really talking about it, and you would have various different opinions from those who didn't believe in the science to those that did, but it was really kind of an engaging time. And then George Floyd happened right at the beginning of that too. So online book sales skyrocketed
Right.
in the, what is it, the anti-racial
Right.
area, which we weren't buying those books, but I'll take it, right?
It's reparations.
Exactly. So it, to me, at least, and I would assume for the rest of us, it was really a place of healing, right? That people can come. We were still able to gather. I didn't feel alienated. I didn't feel alone, and I don't think the people that were coming to Black Dot at that time. So when I reflect back, other than the loss of lives, because I do know some that lost their lives, it was a good time. Like, I'd like to see those numbers again. Especially online. It's like, how do you maintain? My challenge is, how do I get back to that? Because at the end of the day, it's still a business.
We appreciate the honesty
We
there.
still have to keep
For
our
sure.
doors open.
Yeah. Right.
Anyone else?
What he said.
Oh, what he said. Okay. All right.
Agreed.
Where am I on time? Okay. All right. Whoa, that's a lot of time for me to talk. I don't mind though. It's 30 minutes, period. We got 30 minutes, period. Oh, man. Okay, I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A, okay? I'm sorry. Oh, do we need to take an intermission? Kazemde. Okay, we need if we can, to allow our panelists an opportunity to run to the restroom. Can we just break for like 5 minutes, please? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna break for 5 minutes to allow everybody to go to the restroom. Absolutely. Yeah, I was like, what is she reading? But it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. No, don't worry about it. And I've been moving it. I was supposed to send it to you, so everybody knows. I mean, not everybody knows, but if you want to know more about what I do, so it's no problem at all. No worries. And I haven't forgotten about. Oh no, ma'am. That was my home. Never. I'm honored to be on this stage, and let Victor know that I haven't forgotten about Warren Lee. I'm gonna before we do Q&A, I'm going to make sure that I recognize Warren. Okay. All right. Now, where can people find out more? www.pageturnersgreatlearners.org, our website, and I'm sure you probably have it up there somewhere. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm gonna run to the ladies now.
That's my mother. Okay, Mom. Love you to death.
Excuse me, may I have your attention? While we wait for our panel to reconvene, I just wanted to mention that I read the wrong bio for our moderator, Fefe Handy, but you can find out more about her at www.pageturnersgreatlearners.org. www.pageturnersgreatlearners.org. And thank you so much.
No, you are please. I'm like, no way. You're doing all the work. Like,
Testing, testing. I'll have a mic to pass to them before they start asking their question.
Okay, yes, sir.
Can you hold this for the Q&A portion? I'm just going to go get Fefe a bottle.
Sure, go right ahead. Hey, Fefe. Fefe. Hey, Fefe. When
Yes.
you're ready for Q&A, I'm going to be doing the pass the mic.
Yeah, Victor just.
Yeah, I
Oh,
have
okay.
it.
All
Just
right.
one- just one. And we're ready when you're ready.
Oh, okay. I'm going to ask one last question, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A for Q&A. Okay. All right. Get back to my water. No, that's okay. Yeah, he's going to get me one. No, that's okay. Well, thank you for letting me know that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started so that we can make sure that we leave room for Q&A. Priscilla or Victor, if you could just wave your hands, we'll be passing around. Thank you so much. We'll pass the mic if you have a question. Okay, but first I'm going to ask my question. Okay, all right. I just want to say that because nobody has really mentioned social media, I really appreciate Katie Mitchell and what they've created with Good Books ATL, because a lot of what you put on social media is thought-provoking. You know, the quotes. I love the quote that you put on there, Toni Morrison. I love that. Share that, if you will. Do you remember? Do you know the quote that I'm talking about the Texas prison, or the letter that she got?
Yeah, that was from her documentary that released. I think it might have released the same year she passed. But she was talking about the power of books, and she was talking about banned books, and she was saying that one of her books, was it Paradise, that was banned in Texas prisons. And she said she had it framed in her bathroom, the letter that announced that the book was being banned, and she said that her book could tear the whole place up. And I think that's so true. There's so many books that they don't allow in prisons specifically because of what they let people know about their conditions and just about the systemic racism that we're facing and the systemic oppression. So I like to share those things, not just always like, oh, buy this book, but really like, this is what our elders have said. These are some words that our ancestors have left us. And so people can take that with them and do as they please with that. Yeah.
I really like that. I just love Toni Morrison's sense of humor. I'm such an empath. So, and I feel everything. I think I would have just totally took that the wrong way. I would have looked at it through a different lens. I would have been like, taking my book out of, but she laughed about it. She was like, oh, I can just tear the whole place up just by using my words. I just thought that was so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it reminds me of a quote by James Baldwin, and I noted it: to be a Negro in this country And to be relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all of the time. I think that was very poignant for what we were talking about. James Baldwin, too, as well as Toni Morrison, were so ahead of their time, or before their time. My last question is, if I were to walk into your bookstore, or for you, Katie, if I was to reach out to you online and ask you to point me to a book that soothes your soul or fills your cup, what would you recommend? And that's for all of you.
I'll start. There are a few. So the one of the greatest things about working in a book space or curating in a book space is that you're able to read all the time. You're introduced to new people, to new authors, to new artists consistently. And so there's a quote that actually from a TV show that I watched when I was maybe like 20 years old that said if they had read a different book at a different time, they would be a different person. And so one of the interesting things about a library space or a book space is that some of these works tend to find you when you need them most, right? So I could have read something a million times and then revisited it this week especially, right? And it hits different. So one of the books that I was reading, or collections of poetry that I was reading most recently, was Coagulations by Jane Cortez. She's one of my favorite poets. Or actually Scarifications as well is another good one, both by Jane Cortez. And the way that she references struggle and references kind of the times that we are being not reintroduced to, because like we said, this is a constant struggle. The struggle continues. But her way with words is something that I resonate with, and that I feel like she's speaking directly to me when I'm reading her work. So anything Jane Cortez, I'm very drawn to. But the collection of essays by James Baldwin as well is something I read early on in kind of my enlightenment process, growing as a young person, and really shifted kind of my identity. And The Artist's Struggle for Integrity is an essay in there that made me feel seen as a Black artist. And so those are a couple of works. Currently, a lot of Jane Cortez, initially the collection of essays by James Baldwin.
That's a good question. And I don't know if something is top of mind in terms of a book, because I'm thinking about my process, because I would probably want to have more questions for you. But my process is, and oftentimes I see people come in and they walk up and down the book aisles, and then they'll come and ask me for a suggestion. And I always go back to the first book that they looked at and stood in front of, because for some reason that book resonated with their spirit. But I've been in sales a long time, right? We tend to talk ourselves out of what we initially want, right, or what resonates with you, and point them right back to where they began. Or I just have a series of questions, because healing or something that cools your soul could manifest in different ways, right? It's for me, it would be something quite different than what it might be for you, right? It might be historical for me, reading something about the Ghanaian Empire, right? That we've done this before, right? That would soothe me. So with each of us, it's kind of different. So I would want to have a little bit more information to see kind of what lane you're in. Some people come in that's really into astrology and astronomy, and but I would be way off base if I don't continue that conversation and find out what is it that you're really looking for, what is it that you're really interested in, because we all have different interests.
Well, tell me your book then.
My book?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Think Black, the Manifesto. So I created a T-shirt that said, Think Black, support Black self, family, community. It's okay, right? And as I started wearing this T-shirt, some black folks would just look at me like, what is that, right? So I felt this need to write. I write long. I don't write short. What takes some people a paragraph takes me 2 pages. So I felt the need to write it out on Facebook, actually. And I sent it to a friend to edit it. She said, this is a book. Right. So I was like, really? Okay, so we added that, and then to kind of bolster thinking black, if you will, putting culture first, ourselves first, family, right? It doesn't mean we're anti anything else, but just making sure that we're doing everything in our individual power to push our culture, to keep our culture together. I was watching on Riverside Church in New York, on Martin Luther King's holiday, they had this program where they had various different actors and actresses recite poems from some of our great, whether it was Malcolm X, Shirley Chisholm. It was just like 10 of them, 10 to 12. And I watched this on YouTube, and at the end of it, I realized that I grew up in New Jersey, so I was a Malcolm X fan. I wasn't necessarily not a Martin Luther King fan, but I was more of a Malcolm fan. But if you listen to some of their great speeches, if you listen to it or you read them, they're saying the same things, but we get caught in these bubbles. I'm more of a Malcolm fan, so I'm not a Martin fan. I'm more of a Martin Delaney fan, or I'm more of a Frederick Douglass fan. When actually all of our ancestors that was out here doing this work was striving for the same things. So it's not for us to get caught up in the differences, Du Bois and Booker, right? Not the differences, is let's focus and concentrate on the sameness, the oneness, the things that they all had in common. So I put all of these speeches in my book so that one can come back and say, you know what? Let's not get caught in bubbles. Let's come together, because we're divided into all of society, American society today. We're all in our bubbles. And that divides us more than it brings us together. I don't have to debate you on where we differ. Let's find out what we have in common. So that's what my book is about.
The book that I would recommend to someone, I've been on a kick of reading what different writers have said since I've been writing the book, trying to get inspiration from them. And I was reading Langston Hughes' The Big C, his autobiography, and one of the chapters was called Poetry to the People. And I was like, ooh, Langston's talking to me now, because my book is Prose to the People. And so he was talking about how he was going around the country and sharing his poetry at different HBCUs. And, you know, he's from Kansas and lived in New York. He didn't really spend time in the South, so that was his first time, you know, journeying through the South and sharing his poetry. And, you know, he's called the People's Poet. And that really stuck with me what Langston talks about and how he shares his story. And it's very particular. He doesn't divulge too much, which I think is interesting. I think a lot of times Black authors are taught that, like, you have to tell all your business in an autobiography. But Langston's like, I'm an adventurer. I'm out to sea. I'm on this road trip with Zora Neale Hurston and Mary McLeod Bethune. And so I think that one's really nice if you're interested in what a famous author says about themselves, which I found also from reading his biography isn't always true what he said about himself. So it's fun to see what they say.
It's your story to tell.
Happened. Exactly, right? So that would be my one if I were to recommend one right now.
I'm going to approach this question, I guess, from the mindset of if I were a kid, because I sell children's books, and a book that I would want to read if I were my 8 and 9 and 10-year-old self, and I would just want to see myself. I would want to see myself doing and being seen as beautiful and smart, and just playing with my friends and flying my kite, and finding love and just feeling seen and welcome. And so, I think back to when I was a little girl in the library and looking for books to read, and I'm a big Judy Blume fan, and I was a big Junie B. Jones girl for sure. But I was searching hard for a girl that looked like me, and I was hard pressed to find one. And so that's certainly one of the big reasons I opened the bookshop. So you will find books that have beautiful brown girls, not as a section in the store. That's the store. But what I love about the position that I'm in is now I get to do and see and find all of the stories that were made just for me, and girls that look like me. And so one that sticks out in my mind, I don't know if you have all heard of an amazing author by the name of Renee Watson. She has written a beautiful series called Ways to Make Sunshine. And it is starring a girl named Ryan Hart, a Ryan Hart series. And she is going to school every day, and she's making friends, and she is, running for class president and falling down and getting back up again, and just doing all the things that little girls do. And so at a time like this, I would love to just get lost in a book and a story that makes me feel like me. And another fun series is called Desmond Cole Ghost Patrol. And these two best friends are really just figuring out how to bust ghosts. And they have a new business they've started in their garage, and they are finding these crazy ghosts in all of these silly places like the zoo and the aquarium, and all of that good stuff. So, and then lastly, I will say, I think, what I'm diving back into again is a lot of Isabella Wilkerson is helping me to just make sense of, how we continue to find ourselves here. And I think I just dive deeper into making sense of it all. And what it reminds me of is this isn't the first time, it won't be the last. But what we know is it's in our DNA. We have the blueprint. We know exactly what to do. And we're going to be all right.
All right, I love it. I love it. So now we will open up for Q&A.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, panelists. I've met 2 of you on the panel, and I'm going to come to the bookstore again, plus the lady that's doing online. I've met you before. Anyway, thank you for being here. My question to the panel, and my name is Gracine, by the way. My question to the panel, how will you get other people into your bookstore instead of online? Thank you so much again for being here.
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
How will you get others into your bookstore other than online?
Did you guys get that?
I got it.
I mean, so for us, we continue to host amazing author events so that you can, and host community events in the store so that we create opportunities to gather as a community in the bookshop. And that is not something you can replicate online. I mean, outside of virtual online events. So we connect those to our in-store events as well. So we love to continue to be tasked with finding ways to bring folks into the store to gather and connect and share stories.
For me, I added a coffee shop to the bookstore, so it kind of drives traffic. I also utilize a space where people can rent the space for various different events. So if you bring the traffic in and they see the books, hopefully that moves them towards purchasing. But I find that you have to do multiple things just to create traffic, but also making sure that you're not waiting. At least I'm at the point now, I'm not waiting for people to walk in the door. Sometimes we have to create opportunities to take the books to where they are, right? So sitting there waiting sometimes is it's tough business. Got to create opportunities.
I'd agree with what both of you all said. We do a lot of community events. We're constantly hosting folks for keeps, whether it's music or film or, meeting space for organizations that don't have space of their own to meet. So, we might take a week or two off from events, but that's truly how we get people in the space is we work together with our community and use, our relationships with other folks who are doing similar work, maybe in different disciplines, and have them and host them and partner with them, and their community then gets familiar with For Keeps. And really another way that we get folks in the store is really word of mouth. Tell your friends. If you have a good experience in a space at Black Dot, at Bunnie's space, Brave and Kind, tell people about it, because it's hard to keep spaces like this open, and we really are dependent on the folks that enjoy the space to keep it there. So I'll have to tell more people about Black Dot, but I have told folks about Black Dot in Lithonia, and I'm always telling, we don't have children's books, and we get a lot of people that bring their kids in, and I'm always telling them about Brave and Kind. I'm always, bringing up the other folks that do this work in my community, so that we're, even if I'm not there myself or we don't talk as often as maybe we should, I'm always referencing the other people that I know that are serving my community and kind of have the same through line as what we're doing at the store. So, but the internet is helpful, and you have to kind of meet people where they are. So people are using the internet, and they're on Instagram, and they respond to, I think, the way that we operate our social medias is I want young people and elders alike, because I think elders are the key to what we're doing in the space. But young folks respond to, seeing what's happening, and it being relaxed, it not being this kind of there doesn't have to be these politics around it that maybe make you feel excluded. So we make it a space where, tonight we're hosting some young folks that make music. It's totally unrelated. They're probably influenced by the works of the people that we host that we home in the store, but they're doing something entirely different, and that brings in new faces into the space. So you have to, do a little shimmying and a little shaking to get people in there. Yeah.
I'd like to add one, if I may, add one thing. In terms of the online space, don't go to Amazon. Amazon is tearing down independent bookstores, right? There are black-owned bookstores that have online presence. And if you don't see the book, call us. We'll find it, right? If it's out there for sale. But the independent book industry is at war with Amazon. And as we know, if I'm trying to find a politically correct way to say it, but I'm just going to say it. If white people catch a flu, we catch pneumonia. So as bookstore owners, if it's affecting white independent bookstores, imagine what it's doing to black independent bookstores, right? Search online for black-owned bookstores, or just call us. We'll find it, we'll order it, and you can come pick it up, or we'll ship it to you.
And if you can't wait, because I do understand that Amazon can get you your books in 2 days, go to bookshop.org.
There you go.
Bookshop.org supports independent bookstores. You can choose the bookstore you'd like to support, and they can get you your book in 2 days.
Thank you all for your work. I visited Berkeley. The Black Studies there at Berkeley has Open University, and they have an elder in residence, and her name is Daphne Muse. And Daphne Muse is one of the first black women to own a black bookstore in D.C. And they went and talked about Daphne Muse's career, and what I started to learn a little bit more was that Daphne Muse was being traced by the FBI, right? And the legacy of black bookstore owners were all being at least monitored by the FBI, just for obviously disseminating information about black radical folks. So I'm interested in what you all think about being entered into that legacy now as black book owners, but also I spent thousands of. I'm from Chicago, so I know the Black Bookstore is a really important place. Nia Images, Third World Press. No Name's mom, she had an Afrocentric bookstore that we went to as kids. So I've known this place to be really important in my life. Spent thousands of dollars at Four Keep Books, and I'm from I live in Dallas now. So, but I'm interested in what you all think as black bookstore owners about the value of actual black books. Schomburg, he started collecting black books as the archive, right? And then started to get other ephemera. I'm interested in what you all see your role in that as well.
Thank you.
I can speak a little bit to your part about the FBI surveillance. Miss Muse, she became a friend of mine while I was reporting on Pros to the People. She worked at Drum & Spear in Washington, D.C. in the 1960s. And she talks about being followed by the FBI, them coming to her door, trying to ask her questions. And as you know, COINTELPRO looked at black bookstores, and being in DC, Drum & Spear was right in the backyard of Hoover's FBI, right? So they were kind of target number one when it came to black bookstores in the United States, along with Afro-Asian Bookshop, Marcus Bookshops, Hakeem's. So there is a legacy of state repression when it comes to black bookstores. And I talk about that in prose, and talk to the people that are still living, who are still dealing with that fallout from that. Paul Coates has the biggest FBI profile of any black bookstore owner in the United States. And talking to them and seeing how that affected them, and seeing how that in turn affected the current black bookstores that are today. But as we all know, we all have phones in our pockets now. Like, the FBI doesn't have to go into your bookstore and, have agents walking around and checking out the books. They can just be on your phone and see what you're doing there. But I think with that legacy and our elders still being here to tell us about it, and learning from them and how they managed that and what they did to, really go against that. Some people were jailed. Drum & Spear was set on fire multiple times. Vaughn's bookstore in Detroit, Edward Vaughn owned it. He just passed last month. His bookstore was firebombed and flooded during the Detroit uprising. So there's a legacy here. And when you think about someone or, the state doing all that just so we won't read these books, you got to think, what's in these books? And I think that for me, just makes me want to know the history more and know about these black bookstores and their owners and the people who made a home out of these stores more.
Thank you for that. And something that you said I think is extremely important is that the elders that are still around, that we tap in and understand their stories and what they went through, so we're not repeating some of the same things. But as you said, we have cell phones. If they're watching or they're paying attention, so what? Like, the fear tactics of yesterday, to me, should not deter us from doing what we have to do. It didn't deter them. It certainly should not deter us. It is what it is. So I'm just kind of mindful of, even on election day, the bombings of certain precincts, right? Does that still work? That should not work. Do that mean we have to keep our head on the swivel? Yes. But that shouldn't stop us from doing what we have to do. That fear tactic has been used again and again and again. It's time out. Those of us that are bookstore owners, we continue to build and encourage others to enter into this space. You couldn't have any more. I think from that time period, we went from 90 nationally to, or was it more than that? It went down to 90. I mean, 90 bookstores nationally is a small number.
You're saying
Black-owned bookstores, where now you're seeing another rise in bookstores, and we have to continue to do that and continue to support one another in that space.
I think we have time for one more question.
I happen to, okay, they're helping me, thank you. This is directed, the statement and question to Rosa Duffy. You're here on Auburn Avenue. We're getting ready to have the World Cup, as you know. How do you see your bookstore tying into tourism and the committee on the World Cup that's coming out of the mayor's office?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
before you relate to that, I want to thank you for being on Auburn Avenue, because this is, and we'll talk more. I just talked to your mom. She's so proud of you. And I'm in
Oh
the
my
tourism
goodness.
business. That's another long story. And happened to be a librarian who came before this building, and we can talk about that. And then secondly, Brother Warren, the whole rare books piece, I'd like to talk to you. I happen to have been the librarian who established the rare book collection here at Auburn, and most of those books initially were given to us by folks here in Atlanta like Michael Lomax and others.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's a great way to start. And now I think we may have a few pennies, Mr. Simmons. I'm not sure. I went on to do other things in 2012, so I follow Simmons. So I'd like to talk to both of you all, Brother Warren, about rare books
Yes.
and any connections I personally have, not in the library, but personally. And then Rosa, if you will comment about your interface coming up with the World Cup.
Yes.
Rosa, before you, and I apologize
No
for
worries.
interjecting. I just want to, for the sake of clarity, Mr. Warren Lee was unable to be here. This is Mr. Kazemde, the owner of Black Dot Cultural.
Yes.
Okay. But
It's
thank
okay
you
to
so
have
much
elder
for
moments.
mentioning his name, because I did not want to be remiss in mentioning that Mr. Warren Lee was unable to be with us due to an emergency in his family, but he does have an antiquarian collection of rare books in his store, 44th and 3rd. So, and he does phenomenal work on the west side. So,
Okay.
without further ado, Rosa,
you.
please
I just
answer.
want to first and foremost thank you for all of the work that you've done in our community.
Yes.
You are, our pillar, and the only reason I'm here is because you did the work before me. So I want to make it clear that we are very, very grateful for you, and I appreciate you being here and asking that question. And I can't wait to talk to you after this. But I'm worried about the World Cup. That's really where I stand at the moment. There have been talks on the street. I mean, for the past 6 years, I've been worried about infiltration and the changes that might come to Auburn Avenue, because it remains kind of untouched at the moment. But I know and I hear rumblings, right? And so I see people that I'm not familiar with seeing on the street. I recognize, I'm not blind. So I can see that things are shifting. I've also most recently been sent a lot of videos, or the same video actually, but a lot of people are sending it to me. Some guy walking up and down Auburn Ave talking about the changes that I'm unfamiliar with, right? So the things that are to come. And people talk about reinvigorating Auburn Ave, but we all know what that means, right? And none of that language can trick me. So I do worry, and I currently don't have a plan right? I don't know how to combat that except being involved in what's happening. There have been a few instances where some folks have tried to come into the spot next to us, and I wasn't having it. I don't know that I had any influence, but I vocalized how I was feeling. Let's just say that. So we get a lot of tourists because we're very close to, Georgia State. So we get visitors that are taking their kids to Georgia State, or we get folks that are going to the conferences. But so that's always nice, right? And a lot of times they align with what we're trying to do at For Keeps, so it doesn't feel invasive. But I am definitely, all I can say is that I'm worried about the World Cup. And I know, how development operates. And just also to talk about the other thing you were saying about rare books is that at For Keeps, we specialize in rare books. So there's stuff that you can only find in the Library of Congress. We have signed things by some of your favorite people in our small archive. We don't just focus on classic. We do pre-2000s, rare books, and ephemera. So that is something that I've practiced for, at this point, over a decade, a decade and a half. I've been working in rare books. So it's something that, while we work in preservation of all works, that is something that I want young people to be in touch with. These things that are very, very precious, these stories that are precious, and they're rare because they were either printed very few times, or a lot of them are out of print. But there's many reasons why something becomes rare, and it's usually because the material inside of it is something that you need to hear. So we are, and in fact, I was at Michael Lomax's house a few weeks ago for a different project, but we went through his whole collection. I'm lucky enough to be, my mom went to Spelman and my dad went to Morehouse, and really they are the true influence. And my grandma, who's here and spends a lot of time in this space, she's there almost every Sunday. Come visit her. But she introduced Black Studies to, she brought the Black Studies program to University of Minnesota and was the first Black regent on the board. And so
Wow.
And she's my life's inspiration. But so it is a privilege to have been surrounded by these works my entire life, and been introduced to their value at a young age. And that's what I'm trying to share with the, and it helps to keep the space open. If there are, I try to duplicate. So if there are things that I can get one of to be on the table so that everybody can read it, and then I can sell one to keep the store open, that's kind of how we operate. But I say all that to say thank you for all the work you did and continue to do, including showing up here today and blessing us, because it is very influential to the kind of this, these stories continuing in the momentum of these spaces. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your busy day to spend some time with us, to have this important discussion, and to talk to these wonderful innovators here that I have the honor to share the stage with. Ladies and gentlemen, Rosa Duffy for Keeps Books, Kazemde, Ajamu, Black Dot Cultural Center, Katie Mitchell, Good Books ATL, Bunnie Hilliard, Brave and Kind Books, and last but certainly not least, Fefe Handy, Page Turners Make Great Learners. Thank you so much, Victor Simmons, Priscilla Dickerson. Thank you so much for having us today. We are honored to be here.